What's up, everybody? Okay, first off, I have prearranged all of these pictures. I thought photos of early 1900s New York would be good for this. And you tell me, have we gone forward or backwards in life here? But I've prearranged all of these photos just to give us something to look at while we have a discussion. And if it's showing certain groups of people while discussing certain topics, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm talking about them. So don't read too much into it. I'm not subtly implying anything. If I am trying to match up an image with what we're talking about, it will be a picture in a picture like this. And once again, are we doing better in life now than in the early 1900s? After all, this is 100 years of progress that we've achieved. So let's just start with that. Not all growth is progress. Not all progress is growth. Me. So, thanks to our debt based wage slavery system that has been foisted upon us, the only metric by which we measure the world is growth. It's never about quality, it's never about happiness, it's only growth. And then we put the blinders on and only focus on growth that is somewhat beneficial, like economic growth, which is really only beneficial to a few. But then we ignore all of the other growth that has come along with that. Growth in homelessness, growth in divorces and broken homes, growth in mental illness, growth in depression, autism, and even growth in selfishness, lust, debauchery, and greed. So congratulations, your stock portfolio is up 10 points today. Try not to step in the homeless guy's crap on the way to the bank. And by the way, it's not the homeless guy's fault that the city won't put a porta potty out on the street. That used to infuriate me about San Francisco, one of the richest cities in the world. And they acting like people have a choice whether or not they go to the bathroom. If there's nowhere else to go, then 9 times out of 8, they're going to do it on the sidewalk. But here, let's compare the streets of New York today to the streets of New York 75 years ago. At the very least, I would say it's a classier society. Now, how do you think these people would react if this was in that line? Someone would have came and taken her away. And if this is progress, then I want to be left behind. So, you guys know what the hot topic was 100 years ago amongst the progressive intelligentsia? Yeah, Yale had over 100 courses on it, though they hadn't coined the term yet. And I've been told my whole life how evil it is and how you shouldn't look into it. So I looked into it a little. And this idea is tied to another uncomfortable subject. Should there be population management? And I know everybody's knee-jerk reaction is, by default, this has to violate someone's human rights and dignity. But no, it doesn't necessarily have to. And I'm not arguing for or against anything at this point, but we're just going to look at the bigger picture and all of the associated topics that go along with this. So, the powers that be have been stirring the pot for a long time and trying to blame all the world's problems on ethnicity. But that isn't really the problem here. There are lowlifes and whack jobs of all flavors out there, but Hollywood's done a great job of glorifying thug life, and everybody's sick of it. This side of things is the one that's getting all the attention right now. But trust me, there's all kinds of white people out there too that I think society would benefit if they just stayed home and didn't procreate. So it may take a few minutes to get to a point. Don't soundbite me, bro. But the Eugenics do bring up some good points. Only I'll admit right off the bat, these guys were some heavy-duty ethnicists for the most part. And I don't agree that you can lump anybody into a little group based off of color. There are obviously very intelligent, well socially adjusted people of all flavors, and then there's ignorant or outright criminal fools of all types. And the internet has made it painfully clear that we have them in abundance. And before you get all up in arms, I'm not saying anything should be done to anyone. But let's play out a couple scenarios here. First off, would the world be better off with more or less people? Well, depending on who you ask, you're probably going to have arguments for both. But now let's make it more extreme. Would the world be better or worse off with 10 times more people or 10 times less people? Now, on that question, I would almost definitely say 10 times less. Food and housing prices are already through the roof, and it would just tax all aspects of society to have 10 times more people. And honestly, who would want that? What would that benefit? It'd just be more people competing for resources, and I certainly don't think that it would help anyone's quality of life. But with all of our technological advancements of the last couple hundred years, I don't think society would have any problem operating with 10 times less people. And yes, I know who would decide such a thing. Let's slow down and take this all one step at a time. Now let's look at another scenario. Name one group of people in the history of the world that if you went up to them and said, hey, we're going to move a couple people into your area of a completely different cultural background than you, celebrate different holidays, they have a different religion than you, they speak a different language, they'll probably pick yours up, but they're also going to speak their native language. But we're just going to move in a few of these people, and in 4 generations, they're going to outnumber your grandchildren 3-1. How many people would say, oh, well, that's fine then? I know they got some trained monkeys today that are cool with that, but any real man would see that as an attack on their sovereignty. Now let's do this. Say it's the Native Americans 300 years ago, and they have a birth rate of 2.3%. Well, the 2 people having 2 children cancels out, so we're going to say a 0.3 birth rate growth. And then the white Europeans are coming in and having 7 kids each, minus the 2 original. That is 5 more people each generation coming into the population. So let's start out with a town of 2,000 people. First generation is 2,000, second 2,600, third 3,380, and fourth 4,394. Now you settle only 100 white people there, growing times 5 each generation. And the second generation is 500. Third generation is 2,500. They've almost caught up. Fourth generation, 12,500. So by the 4th generation, the white Europeans outnumber the Native Americans 3-1. Is that fair? Is that a good thing? Well, I don't think so. And I know the patriarchy crowd definitely wouldn't think so. But it does seem a little unfair to come in and outbreed someone in their own homeland, doesn't it? And I want a hard yes or no on that. A hard yes, it's unfair, or hard no, it's cool. I'm guessing most people said yes, it's unfair. But now let me put it this way. This is exactly what's going on in my little podunk nowhere America town right now. We have a population of about 2,000 people. And statistically speaking, white people have 2.3 children per woman. But you can kind of take statistics with a grain of salt because the town's only really grown by 500 people since the 1960s. Now, they say that the average Mexican woman in the early 1900s had approximately 6.8 children. They say that that's down to 2.15 now. You ain't fooling me. I lived in California, and everybody knows that Mexicans have big families, and I'm not saying anything at all bad about Mexicans. I got a lot of respect for most Mexicans. It's just a fact that they have a lot of kids, as to where white people have kind of stabilized their own population growth. I drove by a soccer game the other day, and there's about 100 people out there with their families. And for every 10-year-old out on the field, there were 4 more younger kids with mom. So I'm not passing any judgment here. I am just doing plain math. And unless they're completely different than the Mexicans I knew in California, then they will outnumber white people in this town in just a few generations. So now, is that unfair or is that cool? Well, if you gave me a hard yes on the Native American scenario, then it should apply to this situation as well. But that's culturally taboo. So let's talk about some uncomfortable things here. Low intelligence, low income, low ambition people outbaby successful, ambitious people by a pretty wide margin, at least 2 or 3-1. So if you have an established, sustainable culture that has already kind of mitigated excessive growth on their own, then is it fair to bring in new people and outbaby them 2 or 3-1? Well, if they want to live in some overcrowded crap hole with people climbing all over each other because it's against their religion to use contraception, well, then that's fine. Stay where you're at and have as many babies as you want. But here, where we've worked hard to make this place nice, we've all decided of our own accord that's probably better off for everybody and more responsible just to have 2 or 3 kids. You can have more if you want, but then it gets expensive to afford the same quality of life for all of these new lives that are coming in here. So is it really that abhorrent to say, hey, we're all just having 2 kids, so if you're going to come here, then you have to do like we do, and you can only have 2 kids? We like having a small town of 2,000. We don't want a town of 10,000 because that's not growth, that's just more people. In a small town, quality of life may go up, but in a big city, it's definitely going down. Does that make any sense? So here's the problem with academia and the intelligentsia of today is we've got too many specialists and no polymaths putting everything together. It's like if you've got an alternator specialist and a manifold specialist and a spark plug specialist. Well, none of them can actually make a working car because they all just have their own compartmentalized specialties. And society doesn't just face one problem. You have to look at the whole enchilada or you're just treating symptoms. Unfettered capitalism has just made us wind up with the oligarchy that we have now. Medical advancements are part of the reason why we have so many people now anyway. A couple 100 years ago, people had 7, 8 kids because only half of them were going to survive. It was a pretty brutal world up until our modern medicine. Now that pretty much everybody survives adolescence, you have the problem of usefulness versus listfulness. Somebody that feels like they have a useful place in society is going to have a much more fulfilling quality life than somebody that feels like a social reject. With technological advancements, we don't need as many people to accomplish the same tasks that we used to. Some people are fine left alone with idle hands, as it were. Like you have your Teslas, they're going to produce some amazing things. You just let them cook on whatever they're cooking. But I think the vast majority of people are going to get themselves in trouble without something useful to do with their life. And there's the cold hard truth that some people can't cope in this society and are incapable of taking care of themselves. And call me what you will, but I think some people might be better off as Slavs in this life. The amount of homelessness in California is soul crushing. So you tell me, would some of those people be better off living in their little quarters out back, taking care of the cooking and cleaning and yard work, or being out on the street in a never-ending nightmare of hard, cold concrete, constant noise of cars, never having a safe, warm, comfortable place to sleep, nowhere at all to go and nowhere to be? And it doesn't stop. It just keeps going on. There's no light at the end of the tunnel to look forward to. I think there's a fair amount of people that would take the 3 hots and a cot, especially if you were ethical about it and gave them a chance to buy back their freedom, just like it used to be in some cases. And I bet you never thought you'd hear a positive case for slavery. Well, I think the same could be done with eugenics and population management. First off, it doesn't necessarily have to, or nor should it, be based off strictly ethnicity. That's pretty dumb. Second, I think everybody has the God-given right to have a family of their own and a fulfilling, belonging family life. But that doesn't mean that somebody that can't take care of themselves should have 5 kids. Nor does that mean we should give out free checks for anybody who's able to pop a baby out. Hypothetically, let's just divide the world into happy, successful people and miserable, unsuccessful people. No other characteristic traits here. Is society better off as a whole if the successful people have more kids or the unsuccessful people have more kids? Especially if we were to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that reincarnation is a thing, because now that's you next go around. So would you rather have a 1 in 5 chance of coming back and having a decent life, or would you rather it be closer to 50-50 or better? Well, if you would want that for yourself, then you should want that for other people too. It's really not fair for some kid to come into this world just to be the brunt of someone's aggression because they can't cut it in this world for whatever reason. People with bad genetics and disabilities, it's also kind of unfair to a kid if they have a 50-50 chance of coming in and being stuck in a broken, painful body. Now, let's take it to the other extreme. How bad would it suck if every man was 6'5", built like a brick shat house, intelligent, and dignified, and every woman was drop dead gorgeous, intelligent, and the quintessential lady. Well, I would think that that's a pretty good deal, but you're still always going to need pots and pan scrubbers, and you're going to need brain surgeons. And no matter how much selective breeding you do, you're still going to have both. Wouldn't that be a better goal than just more people, more people, more people? Do we really need more of this? Well, if you've made it this far, I guess you're in for the long haul. Hopefully, I've weeded out the weak-willed, and everybody knows how to entertain a thought without actually subscribing to it. One of the worst things going today is that's bad, so you can't talk about it. Well, okay, why is it bad? Or not platforming someone so you can just hide their ideas from the rest of the world. There can be good aspects to an overall bad idea, and vice versa. Look at all the good Washington has done. So you've probably heard about the Eugenics with the German Z's and their quest for the master tribe. From what I've seen, it looks like that is blown way out of proportion. They lost a lot of men in Dub Dub 1, and the country needed sons. So they incentivize productive, good citizens to have more babies. And there's really nothing dastardly about that. If you're a healthy, sane individual and you want to give the country 3 children, then we'll make you tax exempt for life. You've done your duty for society. But you do have to qualify as someone that it's desirable to have more of you. The slippery slope that they got on was forced sterilization. But we got all kinds of crazies out there today, and we definitely don't need more of them. And you tell me, as moral, compassionate human beings, should we allow someone who is completely psychotic or heavily addicted to have children? I mean, yeah, the child may grow up to be well adjusted, but they're going to have some scars, emotionally speaking. So is it fair to that child when all of the adults in the room know that that person has some serious issues and that child is going to suffer as a result of those? See, when you really start thinking about these issues, it's not as black and white as they would have you believe. I mean, if farmers hadn't just used basic common sense and replanted the best of their crops year after year, then our corn would look like that dinky little thing on the left. So we breed the best vegetables, the best cows, horses, pigs, dogs, cats, you name it. And we now have a much superior specimen to what we used to have. But to do that with humans, that's just wrong. Well, I'm not totally convinced about that. And once again, forget everything you've heard about the master tribe scenario. What's wrong with having the best of all ethnicities? To accomplish that over time, you don't even have to rob anyone of their right to have a family. But you do have to limit how big that family is. If you let the sickly, gimpy bull impregnate 3/4 of your stock and your big, strong stud bull only 1/4 of the stock and keep repeating that process, then in a few generations, you're going to have a sickly, gimpy stock. Here in my area, it's always the morbidly obese that have 5 children. And the majority of the time, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And that's something that we have to acknowledge. So let's hear, finally, after 18 and a half minutes, I had to weed out the sensitive types, what some of these progressives of 100 years ago said about this subject. And just a quick side note, almost everyone listening right now would agree with the original liberals and the original progressives. It was the comrades that destroyed all that and turned them into walking zombies. But it was actually the progressives 100 years ago that were against the mass importation of noobs. And they pointed out things like this. The men and women who first came to America were Nordic, clean-blooded, strong-limbed people from England, Ireland, Scotland, Scandinavia, Belgium, Holland, Germany, and France. The millions that followed them for a full 2 centuries were also Nordic, holding the same customs, ideas, and ideals, fitting into the life they found as skin fits the hand. Not until 1880 was there any vital change in the character of immigration, and then commenced the tidal wave of 2 new stocks, the Alpine from Central Europe, Slavs for the most part, and the Mediterranean, the small swarthy people from southern Italy, Greece, Spain, and northern Africa. So let me just ask a question here. Yes, we can intermix the stock of people from all around the world, but should we? I mean, for all I know, as much as they've turned science into scientism, that could be the number one cause of mental illness, just hypothetically speaking. The truth is we're living through the results of that experiment. And although there are a lot of other variables, it would seem that society has declined in the last 100 years. Now, I say marry who you love, but that is a question worth asking for posterity's sake. Francis A. Walker writes, they are beaten men from beaten races, representing the worst failures in the struggle for existence. So, just like that recent push that really kicked off in 2020, where they tried to flood as many people in as fast as they could, because their goal is to control society, not to live in a good one, they basically opened up the prisons and cleaned out their skid rows and sent everybody here. Great, now we have diversity. Well, I got a pretty good diversity of spoiled milk and week old shrimp in my trash can outside, and it stinks. Inviting in criminals and lowlifes from other areas of the world is not going to bring them up in society. It's going to bring society down towards them. There exists today a widespread and fatuous belief in the power of environment as well as of education and opportunity to alter heredity, which arises from the dogma of the brotherhood of man, derived in its turn from the loose thinkers of the French Revolution and their American mimics. Now, just so you know, the French Revolution was the real power behind the comrade movements just getting their boots on. And it was one of the most depraved eras of human existence. The man of the old stock is being crowded out of many country districts by these foreigners, just as he is today being literally driven off the street of New York City by the swarms of Polish Greys. We Americans must realize that the altruistic ideals which have controlled our social development during the past century and the maudlin sentimentalism that has made America, quote, an asylum for the oppressed, are sweeping the nation towards a racial abyss. Now, let's go back up to the first paragraph. A widespread belief in the power of environment as well as of education and opportunity to alter heredity. Now, today we have this magical belief that education will solve everything. But you will hardly ever make a lazy person into an ambitious person. You will hardly ever turn a follower into a leader, and you will never take a person with an IQ of 80 and turn them into a rocket surgeon. Now, yes, education should be available to everyone who is willing and able to take that information and turn it into something productive. But a lot of people just don't want to. Like the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Plus, there are all kinds of educated people that are just outright criminals, and you're not going to change that. So they need to stop acting like education is some magic pill. It's not going to change anybody's stripes most of the time. So I think this would be a much better idea. Yeah, everybody deserves how to learn how to read and write, and most everybody can learn that. They need to know basic mathematics too. But by the time you're in the 6th grade, they know if you're somebody that's college bound or if you're just trying to get through school so you can get on with life. Why waste another 6 years of somebody's life on crap that they're never going to use? We need welders. We need carpenters. We need cooks. We need arborists. We need all kinds of people to make this world run. And not many people have the dedication and self-discipline and intelligence to become a doctor. So the people that do devote all of their time to that, they deserve to be richly rewarded. But we also need all of those other positions filled, so they deserve to have a salary that can afford them a dignified life. And here's the deal, and this is a big point. That used to be the case. Used to, one man could go out and swing a hammer all day and come home to a nice house and the beautiful wife that's been raising the kids all day, and they could live a happy, dignified life. I mean, back in the day, even the guy flipping burgers could do the same thing. So why can't we do that now? I think I've gone on about long enough here, so I'm just going to give the simplified answer on that one. Because a bunch of parasites have sold us out. And they don't give a damn about everybody's quality of life. They only care about their quality of life. So some of you guys might have agreed with some of that. You might have disagreed with a lot of that. But I hope I showed you that these aren't ideas that should just be dismissed outright. Like the saying goes, if your only tool's a hammer, then every problem is a nail. And we've got all of these people trying to focus on their little specialty and nobody stepping back, looking at the bigger picture and trying to offer solutions. Now, I'll tell you my personal feelings on this. I 100% think that there should be less people. Look, I noticed the difference big time between 2005 when I moved to California and 2019 when I moved out. There was 3 times as much traffic down in sleepy San Clemente, California by the time I left there, and everywhere is just packed to the brim. And that has nothing to do with birth rates. That's because of their import policies. But even coming back to my little podunk area of America, there are way more people everywhere than when I was a kid. And the fact is, we definitely don't need more people. So do we want more people? Is that improving anyone's life by having more people? Well, I say no. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.